It all started with a whisper from deep space, so faint, most scientists would have ignored it. But one team in South Africa didn't. They were working late at the Meerkat radio telescope array, scanning the sky for strange signals, like they always did. That night, something unusual popped up on their screens. A repeating burst of radio waves coming from far beyond our solar system. At first, it looked like just another fast radio burst, those mysterious cosmic flashes astronomers still don't fully understand. But this one was different. Buried inside the signal was a pattern, not random noise, not interference from a satellite. A clear repeating sequence of prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. That's not something nature usually does. Nature doesn't count primes. Minds do. The team stayed up all night double-checking their equipment, ruling out glitches, rerunning the data. Everything checked out. This signal was real, and it was artificial. Someone or something out there was trying to get attention in the most basic universal language, math. Word spread quietly through the scientific community. Within hours, a secure message landed in the inbox of a small, little-known group inside a joint U.S.-European space security unit. They weren't astronomers. They were analysts, linguists, and ex-military strategists who'd been quietly preparing for this exact moment for decades, just in case. Their job wasn't to study the stars, but to watch for signs that we weren't alone, and to decide what to do if we ever got proof. Within 48 hours, everything changed. The South African team was told to stop talking. Their raw data was copied, encrypted, and shipped off to a secure facility in Germany. Publicly, space agencies issued a bland statement. Anomalous signal detected, likely instrumental error or terrestrial interference. Investigation ongoing. The news cycle moved on. Most people never heard about it, but behind closed doors things moved fast. Experts from NASA, ESA, and a handful of other spacefaring nations were flown in under strict confidentiality. They listened to the signal again and again. They ran simulations. They debated. And then, buried in the polarization of the waves like a hidden layer beneath the surface, they found more than just primes. There were coordinates, a timeline, and a phrase repeated in a structure that felt deliberate. Galactic Accord. Compliance required. No one knew what that meant. But it sounded official, like a rule book from somewhere far beyond Earth. Then came the next shock. The signal wasn't just a message. It was a reply. Someone had been listening to us for a long time. For years, humanity had been blasting radio waves into space. TV broadcasts, radar pulses, satellite chatter. We thought we were shouting into an empty void. But now it seemed someone had been listening and waiting. And when we finally sent something structured, like the Arecibo message decades ago, or recent deep space laser experiments, they answered. The group handling the situation, later known only as the Interstellar Liaison Cell, knew they couldn't go public. Not yet. The world wasn't ready. Imagine telling billions of people that not only are we not alone, but there's some kind of galactic authority watching us, judging whether we're ready or not. Panic, conspiracy theories, governments collapsing, markets crashing. The risks felt too high, so they made a choice. A quiet one. They'd manage this alone, on behalf of all humanity without asking permission. They believed they were protecting us. What they didn't realize was that silence has a cost. As weeks passed, more signals arrived, subtle, almost hidden in background cosmic noise. Each one carried more information. References to other star systems, warnings about technological adolescence, mentions of a council made up of civilizations far older than ours. They called themselves the Galaxy Council. They claimed to uphold peace and order across thousands of worlds, and according to them, Earth was on probation. Why? Because we'd started poking too far. Our probes were drifting past Pluto. Our telescopes were mapping exoplanets in detail. Our AI was getting smart enough to decode alien patterns. To them, that wasn't curiosity. It was a threat. The liaison cell was stunned. They'd expected curiosity, maybe even friendship. Not judgment. Not rules, but the council wasn't asking for a debate. They were offering a deal. Stop expanding into deep space, agree to limited observation of Earth, and they'd leave us alone. No invasion. No contact, just quiet coexistence from a distance. The human representatives, scientists, generals, diplomats argued for days. Some wanted to say no. Others feared what might happen if they refused. In the end, fear won, they agreed. But instead of telling the world the truth, they invented a cover story. They announced a new Global Space Sustainability Pact, claiming it was about protecting the solar system from space junk and preserving celestial environments. It sounded noble, responsible. No one questioned it too hard. Meanwhile, telescopes were quietly reprogrammed. Missions beyond the outer planets were delayed or canceled under budget pretexts. Independent researchers who asked too many questions found their grants mysteriously drying up. The message was clear: don't look too far. Don't ask too loud. Back in South Africa, the original team that found the signal was reassigned to other projects. They were thanked, praised for their vigilance, and gently steered away from deep space monitoring. One of them later said, "It felt like we'd uncovered something sacred, and then watched it get locked in a vault." For a while it worked. Life went on. People scrolled through their phones, argued about politics, fell in love, worried about the weather. The stars stayed silent to the public ear. But space doesn't keep secrets forever, because out there, in the cold dark between stars, someone had already spoken, and they'd been watching long before we ever thought to look back. The real story wasn't about aliens. It was about us. About what happens when a few people decide they know what's best for everyone else. About trust. About truth. And about the moment humanity realized it wasn't just exploring the universe. The universe had already been watching us back. And that whisper from the stars? It was only the beginning. After that first signal, things didn't calm down, they got quieter. And in silence, decisions were made that would shape the future of everyone on Earth, even though no one knew it at the time. The group handling the contact, later referred to in leaked documents only as the liaison cell, started getting more messages. Not loud broadcasts, but subtle nudges hidden in cosmic background noise like someone whispering through a wall. These weren't just greetings. They were instructions, rules, and they came from something calling itself the Galaxy Council. According to what they shared, this council wasn't a single species or planet. It was a network, civilizations that had been around for thousands, maybe millions of years. They'd seen young species like ours rise before. Some grew wise. Others destroyed themselves, or worse, tried to conquer others. The council claimed their job was to prevent chaos, to keep the galaxy stable. And right now they saw humanity as unpredictable, too emotional, too divided, too eager to build weapons while barely feeding their own people. To them, our space programs weren't about science, they were about dominance. Every rocket we launched, every probe sent past Mars, looked like preparation for expansion. And expansion in their eyes meant risk, so they made an offer. Stop pushing beyond the edge of our solar system. Agree to let them observe Earth from a distance without interfering, and they'd leave us alone. No contact, no war. Just peaceful distance until we matured. The people in charge on Earth faced a terrible choice. Tell the world and risk panic, division, maybe even global chaos, or accept the deal quietly and buy time. They chose silence. They spun a story the public could accept. A new international agreement to protect space. They said deep space missions were being paused to avoid cluttering the solar system with debris, to preserve other worlds for future generations. It sounded responsible, even noble. Most scientists went along with it, some because they believed it, others because they were told to. But behind the scenes, real exploration slowed to a crawl. Missions to the outer planets were delayed under vague technical excuses. New telescope projects aimed at studying exoplanets lost funding overnight. Private space companies were quietly encouraged to focus on near-Earth activities. Anyone who questioned why suddenly everything beyond Jupiter seemed off-limits was met with polite silence or bureaucratic roadblocks. The strangest part? The Galaxy Council didn't demand money, resources, or worship. They didn't threaten invasion. They just wanted us to stay put, like a child told not to leave the yard until they've learned the rules. And for a while it worked. Life on Earth went on as usual. People worried about jobs, weather, sports, and social media. The stars remained beautiful but distant, unchanging in the night sky. But not everyone bought the official story. In university labs, in amateur astronomy clubs, in quiet corners of online forums, some people started noticing odd gaps. Why had the James Webb Space Telescope suddenly stopped targeting certain star systems? Why were deep space communication arrays being repurposed for Earth observation? Why did every space agency now use the exact same language about sustainability and caution? One researcher in Chile working on a small satellite project found something strange. While calibrating his equipment, he picked up a faint echo, a signal that didn't match any known satellite or natural source. It repeated every 17 hours like clockwork. He reported it. 2 days later, his project funding was cut. His university told him to focus on approved priorities. Another group in Japan built a homemade radio dish from spare parts. They weren't professionals, just curious engineers who loved space. They pointed it toward the Oort cloud, the icy shell at the edge of our solar system, just for fun. What they recorded wasn't static. It was a low-frequency hum with a rhythm, too steady to be natural. They posted their findings online. Within hours, the video was flagged and removed for policy violations. Their accounts were suspended. No explanation, these weren't conspiracies. They were patterns, and patterns tell a story. Meanwhile, the liaison cell kept communicating with the Galaxy Council through hidden channels, using quantum-encrypted links buried in deep space network traffic. So advanced most governments didn't even know they existed. The Council sent updates. Compliance noted. Observation. Protocols active. No breaches detected, but then came the first real test, a Chinese space mission designed to study cosmic rays near the edge of the solar system accidentally drifted closer to a region the Council had marked as restricted, not because of aggression, but because of a minor navigation error. Within minutes, the liaison cell received a new message from the Council. Just 3 words: correct, conceal, continue. The mission was immediately recalled. Publicly, officials said there was a power anomaly. Privately, engineers were ordered to erase certain data logs. The probe was reprogrammed to avoid that sector forever. That's when the truth started to sink in for those inside the loop. This wasn't just observation. It was control. Subtle, invisible, but real. The Galaxy Council wasn't just watching. They were drawing lines in the cosmic sand and punishing anyone who stepped over them, even by accident. What made it worse was that the punishment didn't come from aliens. It came from other humans, governments, agencies, leaders who'd agreed to enforce the rules to avoid conflict. They told themselves they were protecting peace. But in doing so, they'd given up the right to explore, to question, to reach beyond what was allowed. And the public? They never knew. They kept looking up at the stars, dreaming of other worlds, unaware that someone had already decided those worlds weren't for them. But secrets like this don't stay buried forever, especially when the truth is written in the sky and some people refuse to stop looking. Because the moment you tell someone they can't go somewhere, that's exactly where they'll want to go. And when you hide something in plain sight, eventually, someone will notice it's missing. The Galaxy Council thought they'd tamed humanity with a quiet deal. They didn't realize that silence can be the loudest warning of all. Everything seemed under control, until it wasn't. For a couple of years after the quiet agreement with the Galaxy Council, Earth space programs moved like clockwork, predictable, safe, and neatly confined within the solar system's inner neighborhoods. No one pushed too far. No one asked too many questions. The story sold to the public that we were being responsible stewards of space held up, mostly because there was no obvious reason to doubt it. But space doesn't care about human agreements. And the universe has a funny way of revealing secrets when you least expect it. It started with a routine mission. A deep space probe, launched by one of the major spacefaring nations, was sent to study the magnetic fields near the edge of the solar system. Its path took it close to a region that had always been quiet, so quiet in fact that astronomers had nicknamed it the Dead Zone. Nothing came from there. No signals, no cosmic rays, not even background noise, just silence. But this time the probe picked something up. Not a voice, not a message, but an energy signature, faint, rhythmic, and completely unnatural. It pulsed in a pattern that matched nothing in any known astrophysical catalog. More importantly, it matched coordinates the Galaxy Council had once mentioned in a private transmission as a neutral monitoring zone. The probe's team was stunned. They double-checked the data, ran simulations, compared it against every known source of interference. Nothing fit. This was real, and it was exactly where the Council said nothing should be. Worse, it suggested the Council wasn't just watching from afar. They had something out there, something active, operating in secret, right on the edge of our own cosmic backyard. The discovery should have been celebrated, Instead, panic set in. Within hours, the Mission Control Center received a direct high-priority order from the highest levels of government: shut down the data stream, erase the raw files, issue a public statement saying the probe had suffered a critical systems failure and lost contact. The team protested. This was science. This was truth. But they were told in no uncertain terms that revealing this would jeopardize global stability. One engineer later described it as being asked to lie to the entire human race, for their own good. And then came the message from the Galaxy Council. It didn't arrive through the usual secure channel. It bypassed all protocols. It appeared, suddenly, silently, in the encrypted comm system used only by the liaison cell. Just one word in plain text, no explanation. Silence. Not a request. Not a warning. A command. That single word changed everything. It wasn't diplomacy anymore. It was control. And it showed for the first time that the Council didn't see humanity as a partner. They saw us as subjects, people to be managed, not consulted. The liaison cell had no choice but to obey. They activated what they called Protocol Theta, a contingency plan designed for exactly this kind of breach. Overnight, every space agency on Earth received updated mission parameters. All deep space tracking was rerouted. Independent researchers who'd been analyzing similar anomalies found their access revoked. Even academic papers referencing unusual outer system activity were quietly rejected by major journals. The cover story spread fast. The probe had malfunctioned due to unforeseen radiation exposure, a tragic but understandable loss. The public mourned the mission, then moved on, but not everyone believed it. In basements, garages, and university labs around the world, a quiet rebellion began, not with weapons but with antennas, code, and curiosity. Amateur astronomers started comparing notes online. They noticed that certain parts of the sky, once rich with data from public telescopes, were now under maintenance. They saw how official space updates suddenly avoided mentioning specific star systems or regions beyond. Neptune 1 group in Eastern Europe built a network of small radio receivers, linked through open-source software. They weren't trying to contact aliens, they just wanted to listen. And what they heard didn't match the official narrative. There were faint echoes repeating at odd intervals coming from directions that should be empty. They posted their findings on a public forum. Within a day, the thread was flooded with comments, some mocking, some supportive, but many saying, "We've seen this too." That's when the real pressure started. Governments began quietly discouraging unauthorized space monitoring. Grants for independent astrophysics projects dried up. Social media platforms started flagging posts about deep space anomalies as misinformation. It wasn't censorship in the old-fashioned sense. No soldiers, no bans, just a slow, steady tightening of the information flow, like turning a valve until the truth couldn't get through. But here's the thing about truth. It leaks. A technician working on satellite calibration accidentally recorded a fragment of encrypted traffic during a routine diagnostic. He didn't understand it, but he saved it just in case. Months later, he shared it with a friend who knew signal processing. Together, they stripped away the noise and found a repeating structure beneath it. Not human, not random. And chillingly familiar, they didn't publish it. They sent it to a trusted science journalist known for investigating government secrecy. That journalist spent weeks verifying it, cross-checking with retired engineers and former space officials who'd grown uneasy with the silence. Slowly, a picture emerged. The Galaxy Council wasn't just observing. They were operating hidden outposts, possibly harvesting resources, possibly monitoring Earth's development, possibly doing things no one on Earth was allowed to know. And the one-word order, silence, wasn't just about one probe. It was a standing rule. Don't look. Don't ask. Don't tell. But the more people were told to stay quiet, the more they wanted to speak, because that's human nature. Tell someone they can't know something, and that's all they'll think about. Tell a species that spent centuries dreaming of the stars that they're not allowed to go there, and you're not stopping curiosity. You're lighting a fuse. The order had been given in one word, but the response was already growing in millions of quiet minds, across every continent, in every language. Why not? And once that question takes root, no amount of silence can kill it. The truth didn't come crashing down in a single dramatic moment. It seeped out, slowly, quietly, like water finding cracks in a dam. And once it started, there was no stopping it. For years, people had been told space was quiet, that we were alone, that deep space exploration was on pause for safety and responsibility. Most accepted it. Life was busy enough without worrying about what might be hiding beyond Pluto. But not everyone stopped looking. Some kept their antennas pointed at the sky, their software scanning for anything unusual, their eyes wide open even when the official story said to look away. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, everything changed. A massive data dump appeared online, uploaded anonymously to a public file-sharing site, mirrored across dozens of servers within minutes. It wasn't fancy. No dramatic music, no masked figures. Just folders full of encrypted logs, internal memos, signal recordings, and mission transcripts, all stamped with classification levels so high most people had never seen them before. At first, no one knew if it was real or a hoax. But within hours, independent experts began verifying the files. The encryption keys matched known government protocols. The timestamps aligned with known mission anomalies. The voice patterns and audio clips matched senior officials who'd never spoken publicly about space policy. This wasn't fiction. This was real. The documents told a story no one had imagined. That contact had been made. That a group of world powers had secretly agreed to limit humanity's reach into space. That a so-called Galaxy Council existed and had issued orders to Earth's leaders. And that the word silence wasn't just a suggestion. It was a command that had shaped global space policy for years. The leak spread like wildfire. Not through official news channels at first, those were slow, cautious, waiting for confirmation. But on social media, in online forums and late-night group chats, people shared links, translated documents, and pieced together the puzzle together. A university student in Brazil made a simple video explaining the timeline. It got 500,000 views in a day. A retired engineer in Canada posted a side-by-side comparison of public statements versus the leaked orders, showing clear contradictions. People weren't just reading it. They were feeling it, betrayed, angry, but also awake. Protests started small. A few dozen people gathering outside Space Agency headquarters with signs that read, "Let us look," and "Who gave them the right?" But within a week, those crowds grew. In cities across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, people took to the streets, not with violence, but with questions. Why weren't we told? Who decided for all of us? Are we prisoners in our own solar system? Governments scrambled. Some denied the documents were authentic. Others admitted parts were real, but claimed they were taken out of context. A few tried to shut down discussion entirely, labeling the leak a threat to planetary security. But the internet doesn't care about borders or secrecy. Once the truth was out, it belonged to everyone. What surprised many was how ordinary people reacted, not with fear of aliens, but with outrage at the cover-up. This wasn't about little green men. It was about trust. About the right to know what's happening in our sky, around our planet, in our name. Parents told their kids, "They lied to us so you wouldn't dream too big." Students demanded their schools teach the real story, not the sanitized version. Artists made music, paintings, and poems about the silence, and the courage it took to break it. Meanwhile, something even more powerful was happening in the shadows of the scientific world. Amateur astronomers, citizen scientists, and open-source developers began working together like never before. Using cheap satellite dishes, repurposed Starlink terminals, and free software, they started mapping signals the official agencies had ignored. They noticed strange energy patterns near Jupiter, too regular to be natural. They tracked invisible objects drifting near the edge of the solar system, moving in ways that defied known physics. One group even discovered something astonishing: faint heat signatures coming from the dark side of Mars' moons. Not from human bases, not from old rovers. Something new, something hidden. They didn't keep it secret. They published their raw data online for anyone to see. "Verify it yourself," they wrote. "We're not asking you to believe us. Just look," and people did. Thousands of them. From teenagers in rural towns to retired physicists in quiet suburbs, they pointed their backyard telescopes, ran the code, checked the math, and slowly a new kind of truth emerged, not handed down from governments or councils, but built by ordinary people working together. The most powerful moment came when a global online thread, started as a simple question. Has anyone else noticed this? Turned into a worldwide collaboration. People shared coordinates, timestamps, signal strengths. They ruled out satellites, solar flares, and military tests. And what remained? A pattern, a presence, proof that the Galaxy Council wasn't just watching. They were here, operating quietly, harvesting resources from the outer planets using Earth's blind spots to stay hidden. The cover-up hadn't protected humanity. It had left us blind while others moved in the dark. But now the eyes of the world were open. Governments tried to regain control. Emergency UN meetings were called. Security councils convened in panic. But this time they couldn't shut it down. The public wasn't asking for permission anymore. They were demanding answers and participation. If there's a Galaxy Council, people said, then we should be the ones talking to them, not a handful of officials behind closed doors. The old system of secrecy was crumbling, not because of a weapon or a war, but because of something far more powerful, shared truth. And in that moment, something beautiful happened. People stopped seeing themselves as citizens of one country or another. They started thinking of themselves as citizens of Earth, not divided by borders but united by a single sky, a single future, and a single question: what's out there, and who gets to find out? The silence had been broken, and in its place rose a new sound, the sound of millions of voices saying together, "We're ready." After years of silence, secrets, and suspicion, everything changed, not with a bang but with a choice. A choice made not by generals or politicians but by ordinary people who finally said, "Enough." The leak had done what no government ever could. It turned space from something distant and controlled into something shared and alive. People weren't just angry about being lied to. They were inspired. If the stars had been watching us, then maybe it was time we showed them who we really are. Not a divided planet of competing nations, but one species, one voice, one future. Pressure built fast. Protests grew into global movements. Petitions gathered millions of signatures. Scientists who'd stayed quiet for years began speaking out in interviews and classrooms on live streams. "We don't need guardians," one astrophysicist said during a public talk. "We need partners. And if there's a council out there, they should hear from all of us, not just the powerful few." Governments, cornered and out of options, had no choice but to respond. The old secret group, the Liaison Cell, was officially shut down. In its place, the United Nations created something new, the Office for Extraterrestrial Relations. But this time it was different. Its meetings were public. Its data was open. Its mission wasn't to hide the truth but to share it. For the first time in human history, space policy wasn't decided behind closed doors. It was debated in town halls, classrooms, and online forums around the world. And then came the boldest move of all. Instead of waiting for another message from the Galaxy Council, humanity decided to send one of its own. Not a whisper, not a coded signal, but a clear, strong, unified broadcast, sent from a newly built transmitter on the far side of the moon, where Earth's noise couldn't drown it out. The message wasn't long. It didn't beg for permission or promise obedience. It simply said, "We are the people of Earth. We have heard your words. We understand your concerns, but we are not children to be managed. We are explorers. We are dreamers. We are ready to join the community of worlds, not as subjects but as equals. If you wish to speak with us, speak with all of us. Not in secret, not in silence, but openly, honestly, and together." Then, to show they meant it, they added something unexpected, a live feed. Not of politicians or soldiers, but of everyday life on Earth. Children laughing in a schoolyard in Kenya, farmers harvesting rice in Vietnam, musicians playing in a plaza in Argentina, scientists working side by side in a lab in Norway, a mosaic of humanity, unfiltered and real. The transmission went out on a quiet night in 2030. Millions watched the countdown online. Some held their breath. Others cried. Many just stood outside looking up at the moon, knowing that for the first time Earth was speaking not as nations but as one. For weeks, there was no reply. Doubt crept in. Had they gone too far? Had they scared the council away? But then, just as hope began to fade, something changed. The Galaxy Council responded, not with a command, not with a warning, but with a question. Who speaks for Earth? It was a test, and humanity passed it. not by naming a leader but by showing that no single person or country could speak for everyone. Instead, the Office for Extraterrestrial Relations invited representatives from every continent, every culture, every walk of life to join the next message. Teachers, farmers, artists, engineers, elders, and even teenagers helped shape the reply. The message wasn't perfect. It was messy, emotional, full of contradictions, just like humanity itself. And that was the point. Slowly, carefully, a new kind of relationship began, not based on fear or control, but on mutual respect. The Council agreed to stop hiding their outposts. In return, Earth promised to explore responsibly, not to conquer, but to learn. Joint observation missions were planned. Data was shared openly, and for the first time, human probes were allowed to travel beyond the solar system, not as trespassers, but as guests. But the real victory wasn't out in space. It was here on Earth. The crisis had done something no war, no treaty, no disaster ever could. It reminded people that they shared one home. Borders didn't matter when the whole planet was being watched. Arguments over resources or beliefs felt smaller when faced with the vastness of the cosmos. People started listening to each other again, not as enemies, but as fellow travelers on a tiny blue dot in an endless ocean of stars. Schools began teaching cosmic citizenship. Kids didn't just learn about planets. They learned about responsibility, curiosity, and the courage to ask hard questions. Artists painted murals of Earth rising over alien horizons. Musicians composed songs in languages never heard before, imagining what unity might sound like. And the word that once meant control, silence, was replaced by a new word, spoken in every language together. Years later, when the first joint Human Council mission launched toward Proxima Centauri, it carried no weapons, no flags, no claims of ownership, just a simple plaque that read, "We came not to take but to understand, not to rule but to belong." Looking back, many realized the Galaxy Council hadn't deceived humanity out of malice. They'd been afraid of what a young, passionate, unpredictable species might do if left unchecked. But in trying to protect the galaxy, they almost smothered the very thing that made humanity worth protecting. Our courage to reach beyond what's known, our refusal to stay silent when truth is hidden, and our stubborn belief that even in the darkest corners of space, connection is possible. The stars hadn't changed, but the way we saw them had. We weren't just looking up anymore, we were reaching out, and this time we weren't alone.